that affect you day to day. Now, speaking of which, according to the United Nations Population Fund, sexual and reproductive health is a fundamental human right. Now, this was reiterated on the World Contraception Day marked yesterday, the 26th of September, and the day is set aside every year to raise awareness about contraception to enable couples and individuals take charge and make informed decisions pertaining their reproductive health. Now, obviously, various factors play into this, including accessibility of contraceptives, impact of culture, religion, personal preferences, and now the COVID-19 pandemic, which has come to eat into gains made in the sexual and reproductive health space. So today, we not only appraise how we are doing as a country, but also give you an opportunity to understand the role and impact of contraception. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and this is what else you can expect. New officers posted in Gachanja following brothers' deaths. Refugees in Cameroon plant green wall to stem desertification.
We should not forget that men are key players in the conversation on family planning.
And to that conversation of the day, the uptick of family planning in Kenya drops during the pandemic. Elsewhere, dogs and their owners hit the waves in Hattington Beach at the annual Surf City Surf Dog competition. Thank you again for joining us on Your World this morning. As I mentioned, we are focusing on contraception. Actually, we are terming it Contraception 101. All the questions you've ever had around contraceptives, and of course, we shall be appraising how as a country we are doing it as far as the uptake of the same is concerned. And that's why that question of the day to you is, should the use of contraception be a decision of the woman alone? Should the decision on taking on contraception be a decision of the woman alone? Talk to us. That hashtag is a new normal. And of course, remember, as we go on with the conversation, you shall have some numbers at the bottom of your screen. And you can also call in with your opinion and, of course, your questions to the panelists this morning. But before we get to it, let's take a look at the impact of COVID-19 around the world. And this morning, those numbers stand at 232,597,880 confirmed cases globally. Out of that number, 209,229,822 are reported to have recovered. And unfortunately, 4,761,899 deaths reported across the globe. In the country, well, I do not know why my numbers have all of a sudden become smaller. Let's see. I think that works better for you. 248,461 is the number of confirmed cases in the country. 240,235 have recovered. And unfortunately, we have lost 5,102 people to COVID-19 within the confines of Kenya. Well, to some of the stories making headlines this Monday morning, there was joy today at the ACK Trinity Church, or rather Sunday at the Trinity Church, Gachanja, Embu County, as the locals welcomed new police officers deployed in the area. Now, this comes after two Gachanja brothers died in police custody, which led to massive demonstrations by the residents. The Deputy Inspector of Police, Edward Mbugwa, ordered the withdrawal of all the officers in the region. Now, the new police officers were prayed for and received donations of 2 seats, one for the OCS and the other for his deputy. And TV's Ken Nyaga brings us that story.
As residents assembled here at the ACK Trinity Gachanja to welcome the new police officers posted here, their smiles could tell it all after the recent violence over the death of the two brothers who were arrested for allegedly breaking curfew rules. Today's service was all about creating an opportunity for the officers to build a good rapport with the community.
Yale maombi mliomba mletewe askari wengine, sisi ndio tuliletwa. Kwa hivyo maombi yenu yalijibiwa kuletwa sisi hapa. Because your role as a church, kitu ya kwanza ni maombi, tuombeeni.
The residents welcomed the new officers to the church, prayed for them and gave them 2 seats for the OCS and his deputy.
Siku ingine walikaa hivi ni kama wakaona au vijana wameletwa huko, hata sijui kama wamekuja na stove ama wamekuja na nini. Wamama wakaungana tu namna hii, wakakuja kutuombea, kutukaribisha na kutuletea lunch. Na wakatuambia ni wa Mothers Union ya hii kanisa. Mungu awabariki sana Mothers Union na wamama wote wa Gachanja, we appreciate a lot.
Following the demonstrations ignited by the death of the two Gachanja brothers, tensions have been high between the locals and the police officers. The clergy urged the Gachanja residents to respect the authorities and live in harmony.
Tafadhali kuwa raia ambaye anaheshimu taifa lake. Ukiheshimu taifa lako, ukiheshimu sheria za taifa lako, usipoenda kupika pombe ya haramu, usipoenda kupika kuuza mandawa ya kulevya, usipoenda kubeba bangi na huko, usipofarakana na jirani yako, hautaona polisi kwako.
Gachanja ijulikane ya kwamba si ile Gachanja ya moshi, si ile Gachanja ya vifo, si ile Gachanja ya machozi, si ile Gachanja ya kuhangaika, lakini ni Gachanja ambao ni salama na ni Gachanja ya amani.
The new administration has now pledged to work together with the residents. The 6 police officers linked to the killing of the two brothers were arrested and are in court facing murder charges. Ken Nyaga, NTV.
Elsewhere, federal police and emergency services in Somalia are investigating the wreckage of a car bomb which killed 8 people near Somalia's presidential palace in Mogadishu Saturday. The jihadist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. NTV's Leila Mohammed with more.
Emergency responders sieved through the wreckage of a vehicle that was used by suicide bombers to execute the latest attack in the Somali capital Mogadishu that has left tens dead and scores injured. The car bomb exploded at a checkpoint near Somalia's presidential palace Villa Somalia on Saturday, killing 8 people. Abdi Fattah Adam Hassan, the Somali police spokesman, says the terrorist attack not only soldiers, government officers, but on that day they also killed a mother with her 2 children who were visiting the MCH center to get her children vaccinated. Witnesses say that they normally stop to check and clear vehicles before they can pass by the checkpoint. They also say the particular vehicle that exploded was stopped by security guards and it went off while there were several other cars and people passing by the nearby road. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility in a brief statement. The jihadist group has been in control of the capital until 2011, when it was pushed out by African Union troops. Security agencies say that it still holds territory in the countryside and launches frequent attacks against government and civilian targets in Mogadishu and elsewhere.
Well, Elsewhere, some of the stories making headlines were still in the region. The Ethiopian Deputy Prime Minister Demeke Mekonnen has told off the international community over what he called meddling in Ethiopia's internal affairs on the conflict in the Tigray region. Speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, Mekonnen has told the United Nations that Ethiopia's sovereignty must be respected as pressure mounts on the government to address impending famine following a brutal conflict between the government of Ethiopia and forces in its northern Tigray region.
While cooperation and concern from our friends is welcome, we underline the need to employ constructive approach, cultivate trust, and create understanding. Accordingly, Ethiopia stands ready to avail bilateral mechanisms and diplomatic solutions to resolve the border dispute with Sudan. It is incumbent upon our two governments to work for peace for the sake of our people that have the strongest bond of fraternity. In Ethiopia, groups that consider equality as subjugation are making their best effort to create and prolong anarchy. At the hands of these lords of instability, we went through unimaginably inhuman attacks against citizens, instigation of violence, and destruction of property that culminated in an attack against the Ethiopian army.
South Sudanese refugee Dawood Kaur fled to Sudan to turn the page on a life of displacement, only to be forced onto the streets once more after floodwaters submerged his rickety shelter. Kaur crossed the border in November, fleeing years of conflict in his home city of Malakal, itself prone to flooding. Here's more.
South Sudan became the world's newest independent nation in 2011, seceding from Sudan. But late in 2013, it plunged into a devastating 5-year civil war that it has yet to fully recover from. Dawood Kaur fled to Sudan to turn the page on a life of running and displacement since fleeing. Kaur has lived in the Al-Kana camp, a growing community of around 35,000 refugees in the Al-Jabalain district of White Nile State. This month, Kaur was displaced yet again as floodwaters inundated the camp. He moved to the nearest patch of dry land he could find, the roadside. Over 288,000 residents and refugees have been affected in Sudan, where heavy rains and flash floods have hit 13 of the 18 states, according to the United Nations. Humanitarian needs have swelled and been exacerbated by the disaster in neighboring South Sudan too, where the deluge has affected and displaced about 426,000 people. In Sudan, thousands of refugees were relocated to different camps while others took shelter in villages that were spared, but many are now living on the streets. Torrential rains pummel Sudan annually between June and October. The downpours often leave the country grappling with severe flooding that wrecks properties, infrastructure and crops. Last year, Sudan declared a 3-month state of emergency as flooding that the UN has called the country's worst in a century left around 140 people dead and 900,000 affected. So far this year, the floods have killed more than 80 people nationwide and damaged or destroyed around 35,000 homes, according to Sudanese authorities. Around 150 refugees from Al-Kana and the nearby Al-Alagaya camp, including children, were diagnosed with malaria on Monday, according to figures compiled by Sudan's Refugee Commission.
Now to the focus of our conversation this morning. By the year 2024, family planning will be fully sponsored by the government. This is according to Health CAS Rashid Aman, who made the remarks as Kenya joined the World Day marking World Contraception Day yesterday. According to government data, family planning dropped significantly during the pandemic, especially amongst low-income families. Gina Kiruri with more.
Contraception has long been a controversial topic in the country, with divisions still emerging on the uptake of the methods, especially in the village settings, where having many children is considered a sign of wealth. Shattering the stereotypes and negative connotations around family planning will be among the issues the government will need to be keen on as they endeavour to sponsor family planning by the year 2024 fully. The pandemic also fractured strides in the family planning sector between 2019 to 2020.
Family planning visits dropped to about 5 million visits from about 5.4 million visits the previous year.
The closure of schools during the pandemic also saw contraception usage sharply decreased amongst women aged between 15 to 24 years of age. Experts are also putting men in the hot seat to be actively involved in family planning methods as they are key stakeholders in the process.
Saizi inatakikana kitu kinaitwa men involvement. Tuna involve hata huyo baba kwa sababu hata huyo baba alihusika sana kwa mambo ya mama ya ujauzito.
We should not forget that men are key players in the conversation on family planning with a responsibility for the good of the family.
The government has come under fire in the recent past over gross oversight in the provision of contraception. Case in point, when KEMSA dispersed moldy IDs to several counties, which they later had to recall. As documented in a special report by NTV titled Out of Control, Kakamega County health officials voiced concerns about substandard contraceptives.
We received around 6,000, yeah, but we have not used it, so they've said we don't use them. So this one I'm seeing also, if the problem will not be sorted, then we will also we'll experience a stock out.
An increase of funding to the Health Ministry for the financial year 2021 to 2022 has been lauded by stakeholders who say it will help in universal health coverage, which family planning falls under. Gena Kirori, NTV.
Going by that report by Ngina Kiruri, clearly everyone has a role to play when it comes to contraception. But would like to hear from you going by the controversy around this subject matter. Again, the question of the day to you is, should the use of contraception be a decision of the woman alone? Should the use of contraception be a decision of the woman alone? That hashtag is new normal. Talk to us. And as I keep saying, you will see numbers at the bottom of your screen that will give you an opportunity to actually call in with your opinion, even as we go along with this conversation. All right, and to help us along with this conversation, I've got a panel, and that is Professor Peter Gachanja, who is an obstetrician and gynecologist, who is joining us in studio. In the other studio, two ladies, Mwana Karama Athman, who is a reproductive health coordinator from Mombasa County. Also, Evelyn Boa, who is a reproductive health advocate at the Maternal and Neonatal Health Coalition of Kenya. And joining us from their home, we are joined by Salim Juma and Joanna Mutheu, who are a married couple, and of course Dr. Estella Waiguru, who is a lead officer family planning program at the Ministry of Health, who is actually joining us from her office. Thank you all for being part of this very crucial conversation. And Dr. Waiguru, definitely would have to start with you. The World Contraception Day was marked yesterday. The theme, leaving no one behind, expanding sustainable access to contraceptives in the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. Daktari, why is this so important?
Thank you so much for that question. Contraceptives are of vital importance to not only women, but all of us, and the well-being of women, children, and the greater family picture. And we are talking about leaving no one behind because sometimes we would find that there are some groups, marginalized groups, maybe vulnerable groups of population within the society that have not yet been well penetrated with the information on contraception and even the function of contraceptive family planning services. So this is really important to us to create awareness on yesterday as we were marking WCD 2021. And we hope that moving forward, we'll be able to collaborate and partner with communities and stakeholders to be able to get the agenda of contraceptives to everyone.
Okay, so of concern coming off that World Contraception Day yesterday, at least in Kenya, is that the use among women of reproductive age dropped significantly in the 2020-2021 financial year, owing to the advent of COVID-19 disease. What are some of these factors that have fed into this?
As much as research is yet to be done in this area, I would say that there were issues around getting to the facility. Mm-hmm. There were issues around having the commodities within the facility. There were even issues around having the human resource in the hospital to provide that service. As you would well know, the Human Resource for Health was gladly engaging in life-saving services within the hospitals, primary hospitals, and hospitals even around public and private alike. So there were multi-sectoral health system issues that contributed to the fact that the numbers dropped. And this is unfortunate, but we hope that during the next pandemic, we'll be able to better tackle the situation.
We hope there'll never be another pandemic. But then again, is this unique to Kenya?
No. This is across board. And you will understand also, Gladys, that there was a great amount of fear in people. You don't want to leave your house. You don't want to, be touched by a medic. Maybe they have COVID. Maybe they're going to give me. There was all this issue, and this is all over the world. So I think as a people, I hope to say this, but not in an alarming way. We dare not be naive to think that a situation like that, not necessarily a pandemic, but a situation that causes people to stay in their homes would come back again. And therefore, we need to advocate for, even when we're talking about contraceptives, some that are long-acting, as opposed to having short-acting ones that prevent pregnancy over the short period. Maybe we should go for the long-acting ones that are going to prevent, pregnancy over the long term.
And we'll get into the details of the options out there in a moment. Let me hear from Mwana Karama. Athman, you represent Mombasa County. How has the uptake of contraception been affected in Mombasa County?
Thank you for this question. It is not different. Mombasa County is not different from the data for the whole county. Yes, of course, the year 2020-2021, the contraception uptake in Mombasa County declined from the previous year, which is 2019 to 2020, which was around 35%, and it declined to 32% for the current year. This was due to pandemic, which hit the county and even the country in 2020, which started in March. So due to this pandemic, the health services were interrupted. One, we had to focus all our aims and objectives to the pandemic, addressing what was happening in the county. Actually, it was like a shock, and it was like we were caught unaware. Then we had to close some of the facilities to address to the pandemic issues, to make the facilities isolation. And also, during this time when we were closing the facilities, we were to redirect the healthcare providers other resources to addressing the pandemic. This really affected. Apart from that, we had the part of the community. The community as a whole had a fear of the pandemic, and they would not attend the health facilities, fearing that when you are attending and you have something related to the definition of corona, that time then you will be held and stay in the facilities, and the fact that people were being quarantined and isolated. So this fear also it contributed to the lower uptake of the facility, of the contraception. In addition to that, specifically for Mombasa County, we had some industrial unrest of the healthcare providers, which also contributed to the lower uptake of the family planning of the year 2020-2021.
Okay, and we'll get to know more about the situation in Mombasa County, one of the many counties in this country that has been affected by the pandemic, definitely. And we speak about sexual and reproductive health being a fundamental human right. Evelyn, in light of a pandemic and beyond, what does this allude to exactly?
Thank you very much. SRH and MNH are one thing that go in line. And so when you're talking about sexual reproductive health as a fundamental right, we're talking about a woman of reproductive age is able to access commodities which are, for example, family planning commodities without fear. Because one thing that we have seen in the past during the pandemic, we have seen there's a challenge when women were supposed to access family planning commodities, but there's a challenge because they're stock out of these commodities. And so when we're talking about reproductive health being a right, we are seeing when one is not able to access family planning commodities, that means that that person is either number one going to get pregnant, which means she has not been able to plan about this. And so if we avail family planning commodities and also ensure that all women and male can access this family planning at the right time when they have agreed, we'll see that most people are able to make planned decisions when they want to get their babies.
That makes a lot of sense. And Daktari, I mean, you deal with these women that come through your doors very often. And now the pandemic is just an example of what could go wrong. But beyond the pandemic, we still had challenges that were stopping women from coming to take up contraception. What are these?
Thank you, Gladys. So I would start by looking at contraception.
Yeah.
Because when you look at contraception services, there are products and there are others we advise women. So it's not necessary that you must get a product to be able to undertake contraception. So, but largely, we talk about contraceptive methods, which are short-acting methods, long-acting methods, and permanent methods. Now, so for you to access the services, from before we know some of the factors which have been known to about 1960s. And one of the reasons is people do not consider themselves to be at risk of a pregnancy. And there are many reasons why people think that way. One, your partner could be away, only coming occasionally, but it's that occasional visit which results in an unintended pregnancy. A lot of women would fear side effects. But again, when appropriate care in terms of before you start the methods that you be evaluated, and there's a document we call medical eligibility criteria, which we check through to ensure that if you're giving you a pill, it is suitable for you. So by doing that, then you reduce most of what we would call side effects. However, we do know that women do have side effects. Different methods have different side effects. For example, the pills occasionally could cause neovascularization, meaning new blood vessels forming on your skin. When you look at your skin, you see little marks there. Those are new blood vessels which form. And we can be able to stop, and that process then it's stopped. We know that if you use the hormonal methods, sometimes the injectable particularly, can cause reduction in terms of menstrual flow. And sometimes it can stop completely. But I do advise women that if it has reduced or stopped completely, there is nothing to worry, because there's nothing accumulating that is going to explode later on. It only means that where the menses come from, that area has been thinned out. If you use the IUD, sometimes it can cause initially a little bit of bleeding or what you call spotting. Implants, the first 6 to 12 months, can be a bit stormy for women because then you have spotting. But we know that if you can overcome those and the medicines you can give you to reduce that spotting, then you can be protected appropriately. So side effects has been one of the things that have been considered. But you also do know that there are what we call myths and misconceptions. The myths and misconception, you hear that a woman who had an IUD has given birth with the baby holding the IUD.
Yes.
That is far from the truth. The two are in different spaces. And so it is not true that a baby will come out holding it. the baby can grow inside the womb with IUD inside there. Of course, from a medical point of view, sometimes we remove it if it is coming out. So that is a myth. There's no fact about it. People talk about, changes in mood. Occasionally that can happen if you're on hormonal methods, but that is very rare. It is not every woman who is using a hormonal method will get that kind of a challenge. People say, oh, it's going to make you cold. It is not. Family planning, particularly tubal ligation and others, don't make anybody cold. That's a myth, because we know that the body core temperature has nothing to do with tubal ligation. If you do vasectomy, people will say, well, you are now castrated. Far from the truth. You only cut the tube, not removal of the testes, which is a very different affair. So there are myths and misconceptions which do not hold any scientific fact, but people rely on those to say, well, I don't want to touch contraception because then I might suffer those consequences.
Okay, that is a good overview, and we'll go further into some of the pointers that Daktari has put across. Let's hear from the couple that is representing a lot of Kenyans in this conversation today, and that is Salim and Joanne. And of course, being the woman in this conversation, Joanne, I'll start with you. When did you start using contraception?
Good morning, everyone. I started using contraceptive after I gave birth to my daughter.
Okay, and how long ago was that?
It's 2 years down the line.
And why did you want to use contraception?
Because I did not want to have another child at that moment. And no, I am well informed about contraceptives. So I knew I had to make that spacing before I get another child.
Had you heard of contraception before having your first child?
Yes.
Okay, and Daktari is saying that they take time to actually advise the women on their options and of course what works for you. Did you get this kind of counsel?
Yeah, I got it. Because I am a volunteer on a community-based organization that deals with matters sexual reproductive health.
I see. So you had an upper hand. Let's hear from Salim. Salim, wakati mama alisema anataka kutumia contraception, what was your reaction?
I did support her. Because for me it was very important to space the children. And also considering the economic status.
Yes.
It was a must for us to decide when we want to have 2 children and how we are supposed to space them.
Okay, and is this information you were getting from her, or you were there when she was being counseled around contraception?
We were together being counseled about contraceptives.
And some of the things she was being told, were you hearing that for the first time, ama umesikia wanaume wakiongea kuhusu pia?
Zingine nimesikia kutoka kwa watu. And there was some needs before nipate the correct information.
Okay, sasa kabla daktari aeleze, what were you afraid of? What were you concerned about?
Okay, the thing I was concerned about ni story na health, the health of the wife itakuwa mbaya. Yeah, those are the kind of the myths we get.
Okay, and you'll tell us more about it. So Joanne, what contraceptive are you on?
I chose long-term. IUD.
IUD, the hormonal one or the non-hormonal?
Non-hormonal.
Okay, interesting. You'll tell us more as to why you actually went that way. And if you can have some of the graphics on screen so that Kenyans can understand some of the various options out there when it comes to contraception, and you will be surprised as to how Kenyans are taking up, according to actually the Ministry of Health in Kenya, injectables are number 1. They seem to be a favorite, 54%. Male condoms, second, 14%. Implants, pills, IUDs, female condoms. Those are the recent statistics in as far as the uptake of contraceptives in the country is concerned. Now, before we get to that, also Kenya is the fourth country with over 60% use of modern contraceptives in sub-Saharan Africa. This is something that I'd like Dr. Weguru to actually let us know. What is this about Kenyans that has made them open up? 60% is a huge number to modern methods of contraceptives.
For that question, and the honest truth is this is a general number in terms of an average, and it is positive to see, and it is very encouraging. It means that the women are able to understand the information that they're being given and to actually take it up and use it appropriately. But I also want to put in right now a statement to say that there are some regions in this country that the uptake is very low, up to even 10%.
Yes.
But there are others that are going 80% and above. So you see, this average is good on a relative basis. But when we go right down to the nitty-gritty, there are some regions that really need serious support.
All right. Now, back to Dr. Gachanja. I think it is important that we also understand a little bit of what you were mentioning before, especially about the side effects that come with each of these options. Let's start off with the IUD. What is the thinking behind it? There's a hormonal one, there's a non-hormonal one. How do you advise the women which one to take?
Thank you, Gladys. In terms of the two methods, the choice is actually informed by how long do you want to be protected? Because the hormonal method protects you for 5 years. And it works just like the implant. So it's a inert material with the hormone threaded around it. So while in the uterus, it releases that hormones in small amounts. And those amounts are enough to protect you for about 5 years. If you're looking for longer term protection, then you talk about copper 380A. And that gives you between about 12 years of protection. So let's assume a couple has had their 3 children and they don't want any more. Then copper 380A becomes their choice because they're not wanting to have other children. They want to remit. And that method is going to protect them for a long time. Now, so both of them are put in the uterus. Now, the one thing which is a concern about usage of IUDs is the fact that individuals consider that to be intrusive. That your private space is being intruded by the healthcare provider because you require a trained healthcare provider to be able to insert an IUD. Not anybody can insert it. So that is one area where women are a bit reluctant to just subject themselves to that process because you have to be examined, some plastic or metallic things have to be put there for the doctor to see where to put the IUD.
Okay.
Beyond that, the thing we know from a medical point of view is that we can have what we call partial expulsion. It's supposed to sit right inside the uterus. But if it starts coming out for whatever reason, and then it's halfway out, halfway in, that can cause a problem. And that's why when men and women complain of pain during coitus or during sex. So that there's a medical reason for that. But if it is in the right place, then it has no issues.
Okay. Now, when you look at those graphics, injectables seem to be very popular among Kenyans at 54%. Are you surprised?
Not at all. These are the findings we have found in a project we read called Performance Monitoring and for Action. And indeed, so these are survey statistics, which is telling us how much of the injectables have been distributed. But look at it, injectables are very easy to administer. You only need to have been trained on how to give an injection either at the shoulder or at the bottom.
How long do they last?
3 months. So you are protected for 3 months. It is 12 weeks. You need to remember that after the period of protection, you need to go back. And there's a window period you can go back a little 1 to 2 weeks earlier and 1 to 2 weeks later. But beyond that, then you're not protected. But just remember, if you delay for beyond the point, then that's why we have unintended pregnancies. So injectables, and there are 2 types of injectables right now. So there's what traditional injectable called Depo-Provera, which is 3 months. And we also have subcutaneous, which means you inject it under the skin. And that can be a self-injection. The trade name is called Cyanopress. So indeed, women now have a choice. Do you want it to be injected by a healthcare worker, or do you want to inject it yourself, or your partner can support you by injecting you that particular method. So this is increasing options for women so that you don't have to really go to a medical facility. You can access it from a pharmacy, and then you can administer it at home. But do remember that it protects you for 12 weeks. So that you need to put it in your calendar so that you remember to inject yourself at the right time.
Now, we take a short break here on Your World. When we come back, I'd like to hear from both Mwana Karama and Evelyn if Kenyans understand this information or have heard or have this information that Dr. Gachanja is talking about, and how accessible are these modern contraceptives, especially in the mashinani. We'll be right back.
Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, we offer free delivery within the same day? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, you can open an account and lipa pole pole at your convenience? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, you can get customized sizes according to your roof plan to avoid wastage? Call us now on 0111 050 700. Ruiru Mabati Factory, mali safi kwa bei poa.
I'm growing up, I'm growing into every moment. So if
Nurture the moment. Minute Maid Nutri Defenses, fortified with vitamin E and zinc to help improve your defense system.
In July this year, Uganda started to implement a new 12% excise duty on internet data to help boost revenues and retire a growing public debt. I am in the capital, Kampala, to tell you how this law impedes creativity and innovation.
Bonjour. Hello. I'm the CEO of the Benalia Group and designer of this automatic solar disinfection tunnel. We size the tunnel so that the solar panel produces enough energy to withstand 3,000 disinfections per day.
From the house of Peptang, we enrich your meals from breakfast to dinner. With over 50 different products, our well-known brands have been in use since 1935. Shop online at peptang.dpo.store.
NTV Jioni, habari za kina, fasaha, tendeti na za kuaminika.
A place in your heart.
Audrey!
Where are you? Hey, Audrey, bring Sean back!
Audrey! Sean!
Sean! Sean!
Audrey! Pull yourself up! Audrey!
I can't! My foot is stuck!
Huh?
My foot is stuck, Sean! Wait, don't go!
I'll help you! Hang on! Looks like they slept here last night. I'm sure they must be nearby.
Sean!
A place in your heart. Lucozade. Energy to get through it.
AMRC's objectives are aligned with the government's affordable housing pillar of the Big Four agenda. Visit any of the participating financial institutions today and start your home ownership journey. Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, unlocking liquidity for affordable housing.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. This morning, Contraception 101, even as we mark the World Contraception Day here on NTV, but that was done worldwide yesterday, even as women and, of course, couples were given more information on how they can take charge of their own reproductive life or reproductive health life. Now, here's the thing. I have a panel, Dr. Gachanja, Professor Gachanja, who is an obstetrician gynecologist, Wanakarama Athman, Reproductive Health Coordinator from Mombasa County, Evelyn Boa, Reproductive Health Advocate, MNH, Coalition of Kenya, Salim Juma and Joan Mutheo from their home, married couple, and of course Dr. Estela Waiguru, who is the lead officer at the Family Planning Program, Ministry of Health. Now, remember, the question of the day to you: should the use of contraception be a decision of the woman alone? Should this be a decision of the woman alone? Talk to us. That hashtag is new normal. Dax Tony says both should come to an agreement. We hear you, Tony. Thank you for sharing. Was James says contraception is for women only. Really, James? Okay, Basi, tell us more. Another one here from Vincent, who says, no, never. A mutual decision-making must involve the two partners. The outcome of any activity outside family planning binds them together. So let couples sit down around a table and discuss. Thank you, Vincent. Ngila, who says, if she's married, wanafaa kupanga wote. Asante sana, and keep them coming through. That hashtag is new normal, and those numbers at the bottom of your screen is how you can reach us with your comments. And Mwanakarama, before we went to break, you've seen what is a favorite amongst Kenyans, and that would be injectables, and of course followed by male condoms, implants, pills, IUDs, female condoms. Mombasa County, Nigani Nanoga.
Thank you, Gladys. In Mombasa County, the one which is most used is the injectable. I think this is the same as for the national, followed by the implants, then the pills, different types, the progesterones only and the combined.
Okay.
Then IUD, male condoms, then lastly, female condoms.
What is the reason as to why women prefer the injectables?
One of the reasons is that it is you don't have to be reminded. That is what they think. You don't have to be reminded about you taking a pill. An example. Then another one is like they seem it is like a short term, and according to them, anytime you would not want to continue using the contraception, you can stop. And they forget the part that even if it is the IUD, anytime you would like to have a baby, you can remove it. So according to the observations done in Mombasa County, is that the IUD is a bit lower because the procedure itself, some fear the procedure when you cancel them, and the myth and the misconception of the IUD among the women of reproductive age is a bit confusing, that they really have this like when you are with IUD, you can also conceive, and maybe a myth like a baby coming out with the IUCD holding, of which it is not true. So a lot of counseling is being needed, and we are addressing that so that it looks it is very economical to use a longer one than the shorter one.
Okay, and it also helps along with adherence, right? It also helps with adherence. They ensure that they follow up here. Okay, so tell me this. When the women come, do they say, this is my choice? The man has also had an input in the same?
When the woman comes to the health facility, ideally we provide them with all the information about the contraceptives available. With the men in Mombasa not really coming or escorting their women for contraception, But on our side as healthcare providers, we really work on male involvement in the women reproductive health. So there are few coming with their men, and when they come, both of them get the information, and after that information, now they make the informed choices. And for the part of the women coming alone, then the same. After the information, she makes a decision according to make an informed decision according to the information she has received from the healthcare providers.
Okay, and as we are saying that it is a right, you know, reproductive health is a right, and this is something that is being pushed even as we mark the World Contraception Day. Evelyn, do women have this information we are hearing from Professor Gachanja as far as what the, you know, different contraceptive methods do and how they are an advantage to them?
I would like to say that most women are not informed. They do not have quality information on the different types of family planning, because you find most women are in a position to get experience from another woman that will guide them to what to use. So what needs to be done is you need to ensure that there's improved access to information to all women of reproductive age, and then also we need to ensure that quality information is passed so people know the different pros and cons of the different family planning. You'd find most women are using injectables because that is what they are aware of on how it's supposed to be done. But if we give women an opportunity to know more, to understand more on the different types of contraceptives, the implants, the IUDs, I know most women will now improve their upticks, because you know the myths and misconceptions that are around those kind of contraceptives is what makes women move to one side of family planning. But then we're looking into access to information is a gap, because when you look around this theme of this year, leaving no one behind, we're looking at so many people are still not involved. Let's look at women with disabilities. How do they access such kind of information for them to make informed decisions on the type of family plan that we'd like to use? So I think we need to look at an holistic approach in approaching the contraceptives, access to and information globally.
And even as we also borrow from the question we're asking, should this be a decision of the woman alone or should the man be involved? Have you seen women who say, I'm a kata, so I'm here and I'm doing this secretly?
We have women who do access family planning without the man knowing, because we find most women are not in a position to accept family planning news because of the fear that is involved in it. We've had women who've gone behind the men to take family planning, but then at the end of it, the man comes in the evening and then tells this woman to remove. So we've had so many bad experiences of women being teared the not plant, So we find it's one thing that needs to be discussed also, bringing men on the discussion. We need to have also men accessing this information for them to know the importance. Because when you're talking about access to family planning or contraceptives, you're saying we need to have informed decisions on how we'd like to have our planning, our spaces when we want to access babies. Because we also see this in turn also has impact in the different pregnancy breaks that you have in our families, because also this also affects the lifespan of the different babies that you get as women. So I believe that men and women needs to go together to access this information, because it is two that are used as the one who are able to decide what is best for us, what can we go for, because it also determines with time how long we want to space our babies and which contraceptive do we want to go to. Do we want to space our babies 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years? So I think it is a mutual decision that needs to be done by the two parties and not one being left behind.
Okay, let's hear from Salim and Joanne. Joanne, when you were choosing the IUD, considering this is the first child you've had, why did you go for the long term, yet you're still young and perhaps it would be advisable to have your children at this age?
Blood pressure yangu ilipanda after nisha deliver. So I talked to the doctor and she advised me nisitumie hormonal contraceptives.
Okay.
So I came back home and talked to her Salim, and I told him venye nilikuwa nimeambiwa. Then the next day tukarudi hospitali sisi wote, alafu tukasettle na IUD.
I see. And inakupelekaje so far? Any side effects?
Ilikuwa mara ya kwanza, but now I think ishazoea mwili. Sina side effects.
So hizo side effects zilikuwa zipi ukianza?
Nilikuwa naumwa na tumbo, alafu nilikuwa na hizo spottings.
Okay. And Salim, they say that a lot of the men do not want their women to take their IUDs because of the intrusion. Vile inaekwa, I mean, it takes a lot for the doctor to actually place it where it's supposed to be. Were you concerned about the privacy around this?
Okay, I think kila kitu ni kuelewana. Na once umeelewa venye na work, utakubaliana tu na daktari venye atakuelewa. Ni kitu inafanywa very professional. I think watu chenye wako nao ni kukosa tu information.
Okay, IUD ulisikia for the first time mama akikuambia ama ulikuwa umesikilia pahali?
Nimeisikia.
Okay, now daktari, there's something that she mentions, Dr. Gachanja, that she had a few symptoms. Yes. You know, there's side effects when she was starting off with the IUD, but now it seemed to have gotten better and settled with her. Is this something that is common?
Yes, thank you, Gladys. And that's what I mentioned, that comprehensive counseling is very important, because when she got that method, she should have known that the first couple of days or months, she would have that spotting, and that it will settle down and stop. And that's exactly what happened for this particular individual. So that spotting is expected because it's a foreign body, something foreign to your body. And the body reacts, and so that spotting can be seen. The same thing with the implant. I mentioned that the implant, the first 6 to 12 months, can be quite a problem for the woman because of that spotting. But again, I like what Salim has explained, that the understanding, because that does not prevent family affairs from continuing because the lady is spotting. And that understanding needs to be called for everybody. Just to say that men are involved in Kenya in matters of family planning. Our study shows that about 70% of the ladies, before they go for family planning, they have consulted their partners that they need to space their babies. And so that is a very positive finding. We need now to do a study to find out the men themselves, can they confirm that information? So indeed, we are seeing a movement, and there have been programs promoting men involvement in family planning.
Okay, would this now perhaps feed to the fact that the male condom is also one of the favorites when it comes to the uptake in this country?
Male condom has been driven by two facts. One is that it was highly promoted for prevention of HIV and sexually transmitted infection. And the other use for male condom is indeed prevention of pregnancy. So it is a dual method. It prevents pregnancy, prevents you from getting HIV and other sexually transmitted infection. And because of that, it was highly popularized and became a norm. It became accepted. So we find that male condom is much more easily accessible. Men are able to use it. In the earlier days, there were some challenges because of the way demonstrations were being done. It was being done with the thumb. You put it on the thumb, and people put it on the thumb. They continue their affairs, and the pregnancy arose. So things have changed over time. Now people understand how it is used. So I think that's very positive in terms of use of male condom. Of course, combined with the pills or other methods, then you really guarantee yourself that you're not likely to get unintended, unplanned pregnancy.
Now, Joanne mentions that when she got her first baby, she had hypertension after the baby, which would be perhaps post-preeclampsia. So in this case, what's the connection between hormonal treatment and the same, and why the IUD, the copper one, would be ideal for her situation?
Thank you, Gladys. As I mentioned, indeed for her, she got what we call postpartum hypertension. Of course, I will not be able to confirm whether it's postpartum preeclampsia because there are certain tests which needs to be done. But the fact that she has elevated blood pressure, and we know that hormonal methods, one of the potential side effects is elevation of blood pressure. So for that reason, it was not appropriate to give her hormonal method. And the choice of IUD although she's young, it is still appropriate. Because if she wants to space children in 5 years' time, she can have the IUD removed in 5 years' time. And she has no issues to remember that every 3 months she has to go for injection, those kind of things. So it is appropriate for her, and the choice of IUD was informed by the fact that there was elevated blood pressure.
Yes. Now let's talk more about the uptick in this country. As you mentioned, Dr. Waiguru, there are some parts of the country that are doing very well, others not doing very well. Let's have those graphics on the screen. And according to the statistics, recent statistics, some of the counties that have had the lowest modern contraceptive uptake include Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, Turkana, Marsabit, also West Pokot, Tana River, Samburu, Isiolo, and Kilifi. Now, the ones that have had the highest uptake are Kirinyaga, Meru, Kiambu, Machakos, Tharaka Nithi, and also Embu, Nyeri, Makueni, Nyamira, and Murang'a. Dr. Waiguru, what have you found to actually inform these statistics? Let's start with the low uptake areas.
Thank you. You will see that the low uptake regions are in the northern part of this country. And you may be able also to relate the distance to health facilities to this low uptake, for example, or even matters religion can come up within this discussion. Of course, I'm not an expert in that, but I would say that it is a significant part of this conversation. So you'll find like somewhere like in Murang'a, Embu, those are cosmopolitan areas, urban areas, relatively. As much as they are rural, they have a lot of urbanization. So I would also relate that to the higher uptake of contraception and contraceptive methods.
Interesting.
The other issues maybe possibly, of course I've not done this research, but the men, I think the men have a lot to do with that. The uptake differently in those particular regions.
All right. Let me hear, especially when it comes to the religion factor from Mwana Karama. Is this a factor that plays when you're dealing with women in Mombasa County, considering that a majority come from the Muslim community? Is this an issue in terms of uptake?
Thank you, Gladys, for that question. This is the religion issues and socio-cultural has some impact on the uptake on family planning in Mombasa County. Despite that, Mombasa being the cosmopolitan city, it also has some community-dominated, like the community Muslim, especially in all the town and in other areas. So according to the Islamic faith, contraception is not allowed to some extent, and we have some of the reason, genuine reason, whereby this is a faith of the Muslims that they can take contraception depending on the reason why are you taking contraception. Culturally, in that region, we have people who value a lot about larger families. Having a baby, according to that culture, it is children are blessed from God. So you should not prevent your wife to have children. And the power of decision making also contributes to that. The women are not allowed to make the decision alone, so they need to have the decision also coming, or contribution of the decision coming from the men. And actually, men of Mombasa would, according to the faith, would not like to have this the use of contraception. And also, when sometimes a woman can be having several babies, like looking for a boy child. And this time, when somebody is looking for a boy child, that is the high chances when she delivers baby girl, every time baby girl, and the number of children are high, she is hindered to use the contraception because she is intending to have a boy child as the culture of that community values.
Okay, and Evelyn, I'm wondering, because there are other religions in this country that are very keen on not encouraging the use of contraception, but also culture plays a part in some of these regions in the country. How are you bridging the gap? Because again, as we said, information is key here.
Thank you. One thing that we need to be aware of, we need to look at the positive impact that contraceptives play into our families and into our lives. And so despite the fact that culture plays a critical role, one thing that has also been done is ensuring that we bring the conversations relatively. We need to have contraceptives with culture. How can we bridge the gap? That is important when we discuss the different cultures and religions that are not associated directly with the use of family planning. So what should we do? We should be able to relate the importance of the use of contraceptives in our family and the role that will play in our lives, more so in the life of a woman. And so that is the gap that is there, because you find so many people are not informed on the impact that it has, despite the fact that we have our different cultural beliefs and different religion beliefs. So I think there's importance to relate the importance of contraceptives, despite the fact that we have our cultures to put into consideration. Thank you.
All right. Now, more marketing should be done on the available means of contraception out there. And this is the voice of the young people. Now, Brian Mushiri had a chat with some young minds, and this is what they had to say.
Again, we are at it together. Your voice had taken a small hiatus, but we are back like we never left. Today, let's debunk contraception from a young person's point of view. You can say Contraception 101. I'm joined by Cairo Karega, who's a third-year University of Nairobi student, just to get to understand, do young people really understand what contraception is? Or do we even know how to use some of these methods of contraceptives? Cairo, mambo vipi uko aje?
Poa sana.
Third year campo pale UN.
Yes.
How is it currently, as far as even with the topic that we have on our hands? Do young people know what contraceptives are?
I think young people have a limited knowledge of contraceptives. I think their knowledge is just limited to use of condoms, but other methods of contraception is foreign.
Yeah.
This is like left to know our parents when they are getting children, and now that's when they do family planning and all that. Contraceptives, I think, is an issue that needs to be talked about more so that young people know the available options.
Just look at some statistics here. 31.4% of the youth currently use a form or a method of contraceptive. That's a very low number. Why do you think such? And by the way, the male condom is the most predominantly used among young people. Do you think there's any factors that leads to some of these things, or why do we have such numbers?
I'm not surprised that there's a low number of young people taking contraceptives. Number one, the awareness that is there is very low, because when in high school, contraceptives are rarely talked about. I think the only thing that we are told is HIV/AIDS, STIs. And when you get to university, they try to teach HIV/AIDS as a common unit. But you all know comrades just attend the lesson to pass, just to get the A, and
yes,
just because I have to do this unit. So there's no deliberate conversation about contraceptives with young people, where young people are involved. So the only knowledge that young people have about contraceptives is when you ask your friend.
Yeah.
And most of the time your friend just...
Your friend also pia hajui ama kona limited information kama wewe.
Yeah.
We've mentioned about the male condom being predominantly used. Ni kwa sababu vijana wanajua tu that male condom as a way of contraception, ama is it that the information again is still limited?
I think it also comes to advertising, because the male condom has really been advertised. Even small children know what the male condom is. You'll see the adverts everywhere on TV. It's not really about the awareness, it's really the advertising that has been done that makes us know about the male condom. But these other forms of contraception, since maybe the companies making them might not have the money to advertise on TV or radio, we might not get to know them since the place of awareness and education is lacking.
There's some parents who feel they're cringing right now in their screens. Did you ever have a conversation with your parents on contraception?
Not really.
Do young people ever have such conversations with their parents?
I doubt, because again, contraceptives is, like I said, it's like a taboo. No one wants to talk about it. And again, the effects come later on, especially with our ladies, and also because they're the most affected, even when it comes to HIV, AIDS, early pregnancies. They're the most affected, but we don't have these conversations with them. And again, even when people get these diseases, they don't know where to get help. So you get young people have gotten themselves into unprotected sex. They get STIs. They don't know where to get the required medical assistance from.
Whose decision is it to make? The male or the gentleman or our ladies? Whose decision is it to make on whether to use a contraceptive first and what type to use?
I think it should be both.
Okay.
But of course, our society has made it look like it's upon the females to know which kind of contraception they're going to use, because we assume they have perfect knowledge. So the man just waits, and if any mistake happens, of course, we blame the females. But it should be a concerted effort. It takes two to tango, so both of them should sit down, preferably go to a health clinic. Because again, most young people do not know that these services are offered, sometimes even for free, in our health institutions, in our health clinics. If someone is in college, university, the university clinic has these services for free, and the doctor can advise them on the best contraceptive that they can use and the one that works for them.
What's the role of a parent in this conversation? Your final remarks tangled with the role of a parent as far as contraceptives are concerned.
A parent should sit down with their child, take them through the options that are available for them. Of course, it's not, we are not saying that parents should encourage their children to have sex.
Yes, because that's now the other aspect.
But they will get married one day.
They're out here now, they're in campuses now.
And people are growing up. So they'll reach an age and they don't know what to do because they have never been talked to. They have very little knowledge. So they are confused. They don't know what to do, where to run to, who to ask. And sometimes the person they ask might be social media, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So sit down with your child, have that difficult conversation, talk to them, take them through the options that are available. You can even visit a health clinic together and get this information.
Any final remarks, Cairo?
Let's embrace having these conversations, especially among the young people, and let there be more awareness and intentionality when it comes to these conversations. Let's not just do campaigns for the sake of doing a campaign and it's put out on TV and we see like young people have benefited. But actually, let's have conversations where young people are involved, get to hear their voice, take them to the options that are available for them when it comes to contraception, health services that they can get, sexual and reproductive health services that are there for them. Because most young people do not know that these services are there. They are affordable and sometimes even free.
Thank you very much. Cairo Karega there, third-year University of Nairobi student, just saying to the parents out there and all stakeholders, sit down with the youth and have that difficult conversation. It's going to save you a lot in the future. That's today's episode of Your Voice. My name is Brian Mushiri. Have a good day, folks.
Definitely a very, very telling conversation there by Brian Mushiri, even as he sought the views of the young minds. What should be done in as far as information when the information of contraception is not available? And then again, from that we hear, and Dr. Igoro, I'm sure you heard this in that conversation, the fact that some of the myths and misconceptions are actually fueled by the fact that we cannot have, or we're not having this conversation with the young minds when they're young enough. And perhaps this would be where the behavioral change would actually happen. We'll be right back even as I hear some of the feedback from Dr.
Get the best value for your money by subscribing today for Classic Bouquet at only 899 shillings for 30 days to enjoy 64 channels. Classic Bouquet. Premium content on Star Times. Subscribe today.
Wonderful, your baby's quite active. After I discovered Molfix, I rediscovered my baby. She's jumping and running around.
Well, we call that the Molfix Comfort. Thanks to its elastic side bands, Molfix provides freedom of movement for your baby. All babies deserve a high-quality diaper. You should also try Molfix.
Fresh fried ginger has ginger oil, which is good for a healthy living lifestyle. It combines wonderfully on salads, stir-fries, when basted on roasted meat, or simply sprinkled on your favorite dish. Now available in 250 ml, 500 ml, and 1 liter.
ABSA congratulates Ferdinand Omanyala on breaking the 100 meters African record at the ABSA Kipkeino Classic.
Stand a chance to win 1 million Kenya shillings monthly grand prize by depositing into your personal or business account. 10 lucky winners will get to double their deposit of up to 100,000 Kenya shillings. The more you deposit, the higher your chances of winning. That's Africanacity. That's ABSA.
Je, wajua? Dawa ya Bedlam ina uwezo wa kuua viwango vyote kutoka mayai hadi kunguni aliyekomaa. Je, wajua? Hakuna madhara ya kukaa chumbani baada ya kupuliza.
Bedlam imethibitishwa na shirika la afya duniani WHO kwa matumizi ya nyumbani. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana nasi kupitia nambari au tovuti yetu iliyo kwenye runinga yako. Tumia Bedlam 200 SL, uangamize kunguni kabisa.
AMRC's objectives are aligned with the government's affordable housing pillar of the Big Four agenda. Visit any of the participating financial institutions today and start your home ownership journey. Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, unlocking liquidity for affordable housing.
Thank you for staying with Your World. We're still on that conversation, Contraception 101. We do have Dr. Gachanja with us. He is an obstetrician, gynecologist, Mona Karama Athman, reproductive health coordinator from Mombasa County, Evelyn Boer, reproductive health advocate, MNH Coalition, and of course, Salim Juma and Joanne Mutheo, a married couple from their home, and Dr. Estella Wegoro, lead officer, family planning program at the Ministry of Health, joining us from her office. Now, before we went to break, Dr. Wegoro, I mentioned that from that conversation amongst the youth, there seems to be a gap. They do not have this information up until they become parents themselves or are married. If we want a different outlook on contraception, shouldn't we have sexual reproductive health material that includes contraception perhaps in our schools?
I think, Gladys, yes, you're right in particular aspects, especially what Cairo was discussing. You see, like now, when he's talking about, we know about condoms because of advertisements. Advertisements have qualities that maybe health messages have not been able to have thus far. And maybe that's why parents are unable to discuss with their children matters regarding sexual reproductive health and contraception in particular. For example, advertisements are simple to understand. They're attractive. They're straight to the point. They're popular, a lot of music, a lot of graphics. You know, they just call you into it and it's readily available. So health messages may not necessarily be like that. They are a bit more serious. Maybe we've not been able to catch into the that advertisement, maybe popularity trend. But you will find that HIV, even being taught in classroom, Rome was sort of not built in a day. There was a lot of lobbying. There was a lot of information that had to go all around, and even popularization with semblances of advertisements. So I think the onus is on us to make health messages more attractive and more available to the youth.
Evelyn, what do you think?
About we need to ensure that we have the refined policies. We have the adolescent youth reproductive health policy. So we need to look into the refinement, but also we need to look also into the equipment of the youth-friendly services, because we believe the youths currently they are the higher percentage in our population in the country. So one thing that we need to ensure that we need to see the government, yes, they've agreed to fully 100% finance contraceptions, but how do we ensure that we have a holistic approach to contraceptions and HIV services, everything, the reproductive health services? How can we ensure that the youth people are able to access this information? Is by ensuring that we have fully equipped for youth-friendly services within the different sub-counties and counties around the globe. And we also look at the issues of financing, because when we are in a position to finance, and number one, we finance, but then allocate resources, but then disperse the resources at the equitable time, and then implementation of these resources are used, then we look at, we are going to have full commodities, we will not have stock out. Because one thing, if we have stock out, then this also discourage people to go to look for these commodities. The same way we have condoms easily available in different spaces, the same way we need to also to ensure that we have full information about contraceptions. But then when you look at advertising, we can also think a way on bringing the youths to use their voices on the importance of family planning. Because one thing, when you look at the different data and look at the pandemic, we had the increased number of teenage pregnancies, but then also we also had the increase of unplanned pregnancies within the different women of reproductive age. So what needs to be done is, number one, we need to ensure that the government, the Ministry of Health, the NMS, now that health is devolved, we need also to look into how can we ensure that all these things, we do not have stockouts, we have equal access to information with different people in our country.
Okay, and Mwana Karama, there are those that come to the health facilities that clearly are keen on taking up the different methods of contraception. What happens to those that do not come at all? Do you go looking for them? Do you take this information to them? And has this worked in actually converting more numbers?
Thank you, Gladys, for that question. Actually, when we don't have some of the methods of contraception in a particular facilities, these normally would have been noticed earlier enough to give time for the people who are working in that facilities. And this is being handled by the county pharmacist, trickling down to the sub-county pharmacist and the facility pharmacist. So normally we have TWG for the commodity security for the whole county. Then we project how the status of the commodities of family planning at the county level, the sub-county level, and actually at the health facility level. And when comes a situation whereby one of the facility or sub-county is going lower in terms of the family planning commodities, these are the methods, we do reallocation or mobilization of these facilities from one facility or a sub-county to another sub-county. We even go further, borrowing from the other counties nearby. And actually, at the end of the day, we manage to get our women get these products available at any given time.
Okay, so for those that cannot make it to the facilities, do you do door-to-door campaigns?
Yes. For those women who could not come to the facility looking for their family planning, we have the CBDs, community-based distributors, and the CHVs, These are health extension volunteers. So they talk to the community, and actually we have this structure of community strategy at the county level, sub-county, and actually going to the community. So there's a lot of sensitization at the community level, and there's a lot of referrals, and also the CBDs, they're being given the contraception which not need the technical procedure to be distributing to the people who need them, and then attach them or referring them to the facility. And of course, we get the data from the community-based distributors.
Okay, now still referencing to some of the research that's been put across in as far as the uptake of contraception in the country and their attitudes around it. If we can have this graphics on screen, autonomy in contraceptive use among some women is actually higher in some regions. In Turkana, it's actually 64%, Nyamira 58%, Kiambu at 54%. Interesting there. And this is data by the Kenya Data Health Survey of 2014. Now, if you look at now the counties where men or husbands make their sole decisions when it comes to contraception, West Pokot stands out at 46%. Now, here's the thing. There are counties where spouses have joint or make joint decisions. These are Taita Taveta, Tana River, Kisumu, Tharaka Nithi, Makueni, Kisii, Uasin Gishu, and Kilifi. Now, Dr. Gachanja, you also do monitoring of the same. What feeds into these numbers? Let's start with the joint decisions and the regions.
Yeah, thank you, Gladys. Indeed, performance monitoring for action, which is implemented in 11 counties, some of the counties you have mentioned there, we did ask that question. When you decide to go for family planning, have you discussed with your partner? And the follow-up question is, does your partner know you're using this method? And at the national level, it's somewhere about 80%. However, as Dr. Iguru mentioned, there are disparities according to the counties. There are areas where the discussion is as low as 60%. And for example, in West Pokot is one of the areas which has low discussion level at the household level in terms of deciding to use those methods. So Iguru mentioned social cultural issues, which could be the drivers in those particular areas. Information. The correct information and factual information could be the other reason, because you realize that a place like West Pokot, education attainment is lower than other counties. And that research has shown that education attainment has something with empowerment of the person. The woman who is more educated is likely to have a conversation with the spouse and is also likely to make independent decisions. And that feeds into, if you're autonomous, then you're likely to be able to access the contraceptives. The other thing is education somehow is related to wealth or well-being of the person. And therefore you have the money to be able to go to a health facility and access those methods. A poor woman probably is going to depend on the partner to get those resources. And if the partner is one who is not willing, then you are limited in terms of access. Indeed, earlier we talked about covert use, which is about 30%, meaning a woman is using the method and the partner does not know. And the commonest of those covert use is the injectable. Because you go to the market to sell your wares and buy your things, but you also drop in by the health facility and get your injection. And that is not something a partner can see. If you put an implant, somebody can palpate. And in fact, there's a new wave where young people are greeting each other and they are palpating, they are touching the inner side of the left arm. And that is a problem, because they are touching to find out whether there are implants there. And that, of course, I don't know how they interpret that information if they find their partner has an implant. So there are several factors which drive autonomy. And I think the key thing here is education, of course, in terms of financial empowerment of the women. But we need to do much more. We need to educate the women. We need to have them very early on in life to know that these things can be done and there is room for conversation. In fact, one of our colleagues said family planning is made in the bedroom and accessed in health facilities. Because you must decide at the bedroom level that you need to do this thing. And it applies to anybody who is sexually active, because it takes two to tango, like a colleague from the university mentioned. So if you're sexually active, really there's a person you're discussing with, and therefore you should be able to have that conversation before you get to a health facility.
Okay, now I'm told there's a question to you, Dr. Gachanja, if we can have that question on the screen. Are we ready with the question? Okay, Innocent Kelly says, I have a question. Is it advisable for ladies not married to use contraception, bearing in mind they have no children? And is it effective to fertility, or does it affect fertility, Daktari?
Thank you for that question. It's a very pertinent question. Who qualifies to use contraception? I think that's a basic question. Anybody who is sexually active qualifies to use contraception. And here the context is you are preventing yourself from becoming pregnant, because any result of sexual activity is a pregnancy most of the time. So by the fact that you want to prevent yourself from becoming pregnant, then you qualify to use contraception. Now, the context is different where you're in a relationship, because then you're using contraception for purpose of family planning. And there are two considerations. One, you want to space your children. You want to get your children every 2 years, every 3 years for spacing. That's what we call family planning for spacing. And the other one is for remitting. You already have the number of children you want, you don't want any more, and therefore you use a method to prevent you from getting more children. So does contraception in women who are not having children affect their fertility? The answer is no. If used appropriately, then you have no chances of reduction in fertility for the person. If you use a condom, the day you stop the condom, you become pregnant. Using pills, the day you stop, you quickly become pregnant. If you use the injectable, you stop today, you have about 6 to 12 months before you get pregnant. But it can be immediate. If you remove an IUD, you become pregnant the following day. If you remove an implant, the following day. So those kind of things are important. So the body itself deals with the hormones, and therefore it is able to clear the hormones. So we don't have those methods accumulating. In fact, if you look at the implant, after it has served you for the duration required, if it's a 3 year or 5 years, initially it will look whitish. But the moment you remove it after it has expired, you'll find it's clear. There's nothing inside. Because the hormone has been released slowly over time. That's how it works. So the fear of fertility should not concern anybody who qualifies to use contraception, because what is your qualification? To be sexually active. We are not asking anybody who is not sexually active to be sexually active. But in case you are, then you qualify to use contraception.
Okay, let's go back to our couple of the day, Joanna and Juma. Joanna, did you ever have concerns about the side effects of contraception use?
Yeah, nilikuwa na concern sana, because kulingana na zile vitu nilikuwa nimesikia kutoka kwa marafiki zangu.
Kama zipi?
Uoga.
Kama zipi?
Like unakuwa cold,
unasikia baridi, unahisi baridi.
Unahisi baridi. Kama ni coil, time the husband maybe I feel itamirritate. Aya, kama ni ingine maybe nita add weight sana ama nita cut off weight.
Kuna nyingine hapa naona, kuna mtu anasema they've been told about contraception affecting their libido. Have you seen that?
No.
Haijaleta shida na hamu? Okay, sawa sawa. Now let's talk to mzee. I'm sure mkiongea na wazee wengine unasema, ai, mama ameongeza weight since atumie hii na hii. Were you worried about that for Joan?
Okay, actually about the myths, mostly upande wa wanaume it's all about culture. Sio ati kuna kitu itatokea. According to the African culture, huwa like hairuhusu ile kupanga uzazi, nataka tu watu wapate watoto. But when you come back to it, utaangalia unaweza pata watoto 5, uko na uwezo wa kuwapeleka shule wote pamoja.
Okay, kwa hivyo wewe tu ni hapo pa economy na population, lakini ulikuwa na uoga wowote as in Joan would be affected by these things?
Yeah, there's those things yenye tunasikia kwa community. Atakuwa hivi sijui mara shape itaharibika, atanaona zaidi. Kuna those myths zenye huwa zinaendelea. Yeah.
Okay, na una marafiki ambao wameambiwa, the wives not to use them at all?
Yeah, I know of people wenye hawaruhusu wake wao wasitumie. Kabisa wamewakataza.
Okay, Joan, una marafiki ambao wanasema, mimi natumia lakini mzee hawezi jua?
Kuna wale najua wenye wanatumia hiyo ya 3 months, anadungwa tu for every 3 months. Wajua hiyo haiachi any proof like unatumia contraceptive yoyote.
Ukweli.
Because wanakataa, wanasema libido itashuka chini. Na hiyo story ya kuadd weight sijui kufanya nini.
Aha. Alafu ushawaisikia, because we've even done a feature here on NTV ambaye wanaume wanasema hii ni kama sign and symptom ya umalaya, unataka kwenda kucheza nje na sitawahi jua.
But sasa shida ni nafanya family planning ndio nisipate mtoto mwingine. So nikikosa kupata nitapata tu mtoto either nimeenda nje ama sijaenda nje. I'll end up being pregnant.
Fair enough. And I'm glad that you bring this to perspective as a couple so that we all understand that it takes two to tango, as Daktari is saying, and of course information from both parties goes a long way in making the right decisions for each. Now, Dr. Weguru, let me bring you back to this conversation and looking at the special populations, commercial sex workers, LGBTQ, people living with HIV. Is there a provision to support them with contraception information and commodities?
I will say this, Gladys, thank you for that, because these are the persons we were addressing with matters around leaving no one behind. It is important that the information that the Ministry of Health puts out is friendly. It is available, and these are special groups of people. Vulnerable groups are not limited by, say, for example, stigmatization or whatever. And so we have such a good example from the HIV AIDS program that has been able to bring all these special groups around the table and discuss. And all these people are able to get access to contraception, regardless of where they're from or how the situation particularly is for that particular person. So HIV/AIDS program is a very good example of how to reach them. And so contraception, being a very strategic commodity in Kenya and in the world, now needs to be taking up lessons from these particular successful programs towards making contraception far more available than it currently is. Others being, of course, persons living with disability. We need the opportunity to learn and then take the information out.
Okay, now Evelyn, even before we take more feedback from our viewers in as far as this particular question is concerned, should the decision of the use of contraception be a decision of a woman alone? Let's talk about these vulnerable groups. What should be the ideal situation when it comes to contraception?
Thank you, Gladys. One thing that we need to take into consideration, we need to accept that currently we have different marginalized groups. Of course, the minority women, people living with HIV/AIDS. And so we need to ensure that we have an inclusive policy on contraception. How can we ensure that we have this type of women accessing these contraceptives without discrimination? Because you'd find most of them are not aware. Is it right for them to use contraceptives? And if I use contraceptives, how should I go about it? So one thing that we also need to be aware of is that as a country, we need to have different types of information for different people depending on their areas. So for example, if it's a woman with HIV/AIDS, is she appropriate if she receives injection? Will this interfere with her health? And also, those are some of the things that women living with HIV/AIDS are not aware of. And also, when you're talking about the minority women, how can they access contraceptives without discrimination? Because currently, we are aware that the country has not embraced them the way they are. So how do we ensure that without discrimination, they can be able to access these things? So one thing that I would like to put across is when we have inclusive youth-friendly services whereby the youths are able to access, the minority women are able to access such commodities. I believe we'll be now talking about history on minority women accessing contraceptives. So if we have an holistic approach when we are talking about access to contraceptives and information, because I believe also information is a gap for the different minority women, and also look into that area and how we can have quality information being dispersed to the different category of women.
Okay, now let's go back to that question of the day to you. Should the decision of the use of contraception be one that only the woman makes, or should this be something they discuss with their partner? Goodies Diku says it's a collective responsibility, but sometimes it needs individual brilliance. Okay. Another one here from Sir Charles, who says the decision and use of contraceptives should be a mutual engagement. Thank you, Sir Charles. Hussein says that's against the will of God. Well, here now you can see the role of perhaps culture and religion. Corino Classic says if she is single, it's okay. But if she is dating or married, she has to inform her partner. Asante. Monique, nope, it's a decision made by the couples together. All right, Monique. And do we have any more? Okay, then for now we leave it at that. And at this point, the clash between culture, science, and tough, if we can have that story on my autocue. The clash between culture, science and tough economic times is a real one in many parts of Western Kenya. Yet some communities still hold on to cultural practices that medical personnel say could endanger the lives of mother and child, and even give families such heavy burdens in raising a large family of children. Now, Leila Mohammed brings us the story of Navakolo, Bugu sub-county in Kakamega, how the community is being taught on planning their families and why the fight sometimes faces huge challenges from elders stuck in another century and demanding much from the community.
No matter where you are in the world, the news of having a new baby by a couple has always been welcome one in communities that can't wait to bring home the new additions to the family unit. In 27-year-old Sylvia Lumumba's home in Kakamega County, the family is counting weeks, if not days, to the arrival.
Nimebakisha wiki mbili ili nijifungue na natarajia kujifungulia katika kituo cha afya ili nipate maelezo zaidi.
The first-time mother works in close contact with medical personnel at the Navakholo Sub-County Hospital in Kakamega. As a result, she understands the importance of spacing her children, which informs her next move once she delivers.
Hadi sasa tumeonyeshwa njia mbalimbali za kupanga uzazi, ikiwamo hii coil, kuna kutumia tembe, kuna kutumia mpira wa kondomu, na nitakapojifungua tutarudi pia ili tujadiliane na mzee na tujue ni njia gani mwafaka.
But while Sylvia and her husband are among many young couples embracing this to match the changing times, some women in the Abanyala community have faced a tough time in their bid to have smaller families.
Nilikuwa nao watoto 6. Na sasa mzee naye anasema tu watoto hawajatosha.
Hata mama amemaliza akona mtoto miezi 4 na amerudi hapa akona mimba. Ni kwa sababu hawana hiyo knowledge. Wazee waweka nyumbani.
Not her real name, Salim is a mother of 6 whose desire to have not more than the children she already has been met with fury at home.
Kasema hiyo vitu yenye uliweka kwa mkono, sijui ni nani alikuweka na kwa nini uliweka. Kama umeanza uchawi, useme. Tukakuja mpaka penye niliwekewa, akasimama wakanitoa.
The health teams in Kakamega County have tried to change the mindsets of men.
The women would only come for the short-term methods, that is the depot. You give and no one knows this woman has family planning. It's like you're hiding. And also with the use of community health volunteers who go household to household giving different health messages. They've also been taken through the family planning packages, so they'll also go and give information at home.
But for some young men, this is a move they will not advocate for their wives.
Inakataza sana, haistahili mwanamke aweke sindano kwa mwili. Sindano inaharibu mwili wake.
Some elders in the community still hold on to the view that culture reigns supreme and family planning is a taboo.
Biashara kubwa ni kuzaa watoto.
Unapata mtu ana magari, ana mashamba kule Sikimu, na anapeleka mwanamke wanakata yeye usasi. Anazaa watoto wawili peke yake. Hiyo mali nani anakula sasa? Ati wewe unataka mali iwe ndio kitu ambacho unataka.
For the younger generation, however, larger families are a thing of the past.
Wanyala hapo nyuma walikuwa wanasema nitakana uwe na watoto hata zaidi ya 20.
Sisi Wanyala tuoe mwanamke mwingine ili aongeze watoto, ili akishaongeza watoto hawa itakuwa ni mali yetu. Watoto ni mali.
Hiyo ilikuwa enzi za wazee wetu. Akina babu, akina nyanya zetu kule kitambo, lakini dunia sasa tumejaa. Manake Kenya yetu nasikia hesabu imepanda.
But for healthcare workers, the battle hasn't been won yet.
Tunaelekea ya 5 years. Kuna mwingine alifika nyumbani, mzee alipata iko, alichomoa na mikono, hizo rods 2. Mama alirudi kama zimechomolewa na akasema tafadhali mnidunge ya miezi 3 kwa sababu hiyo hatajua kama iko.
Leila Mohamed, NTV.
Wow, I think that story underscores what has been spoken about here and even gives better perspective about the impact of culture, religion, myths and misconceptions about contraception. Now, even as we bring this conversation to a close, I'd like to hear the closing remarks, starting off with Mwana Karama. After that report, and of course we've talked about going forward, what would be your parting shot?
Thank you, Gladys, for that. Actually, we need to respect the religion and even the culture. But when you say that, we also need to give proper information to our women about what we are talking about, what is there for them. And now it will be their responsibility to decide, if they get the right information, to decide what to do. Not leaving behind the people living with a disability. Also, we need to include them in our service provision, and also the youth. And the youth, they need a lot of the right information so that they can make informed decisions of their life, including their reproductive health and contraception, so that they know, and they know what is supposed to be done and what ideally is supposed to be done at a particular age. What is important for them? What is the priority? Then and at what time is the right time for them to use the contraception?
Okay, well said. Evelyn, access financing has come up as something that's so critical in ensuring that there is accessibility and availability of contraceptive commodities. Your parting shot on the same?
I would like to call upon the different stakeholders involved. Number one, would like to talk about adequate allocation of resources towards family planning, but then also would like to look into effective utilization of the allocated resources, whereby the resources allocated are utilized effectively, but also timely disbursement of these resources will also be a good use of it. But then also looking at the pandemic, we also have to look at systems that are dealing with emergencies in the different health sectors, whereby no health sector would suffer because there's an emergency in the different areas, so that to ensure that we have effective utilization of the different family planning commodities, but also look into the different friendly services that are fully equipped to enable the youth access family planning contraceptives, to ensure that we have the reduced number of unplanned pregnancies.
Okay, now Dr. Wegoro, you are representing Big Brother here. The Ministry of Health Quality Assurance has come into sharp focus, especially after the incident we had in July about expired implants distributed across some of the regions. What can you assure Kenyans in as far as commodities are concerned?
Thank you for that question. I would want to say that incidences like that are very few, if at all. And it is an unfortunate situation that it happened, and it was not stopped prior to the product actually reaching the facilities and the hospitals. I would want to say that there are many factors that could have contributed to this status of the commodity itself, regardless of the fact that they actually reach. So I want to say that it is unfortunate and it is an incident that will not be repeated. But there are structures within government, like the Pharmacies and Poisons Board, KBS, all involved in looking at the product and what the product is supposed to be like before it reaches the people. So I would want to assure Kenyans that structures are there. The fact that they will be improved or stronger reinforcements will be in place is just a matter of time, but this was a terrible and unfortunate incident.
Okay, to the couple amongst us, that is Joanna and Salim, I'd like to hear from the man because you represent a population that has been asked to be part and parcel of this conversation. Ungetaka kuambia wazee wengine vipi?
Okay, ningependa kuambia watu, let family planning ikuwe ya kila mtu. Both the man and the woman be involved, because that's why we call it family planning. Ni kitu yenyu wawili mdiscuss, muelewane, ndio familia iweze kusonga mbele.
Asante sana. And of course, Professor Gachanja, it is important that people understand the information behind contraception for them to even seek your services. In 30 seconds, what would you like to say?
Thank you, Gladys. For me, I would like to repeat the fact that anybody who is sexually active requires contraception if they are preventing a pregnancy, or require family planning methods if they want to space or limit the number of children. But also important is that let's share the research findings with the community, and we are translating the data to be consumable by individuals who are not scientists, so that they can make informed decisions. I have had the colleagues from Western Kenya, and that rationale being explained there was a situation where many children would die in early childhood. But today, our health facilities are able to ensure you that your children, 2 or 3, will survive.
Yes.
And therefore, you do not need to have many children to be wealthy. The 3 children could make you very wealthy. So it is important for us as Kenyans to embrace that fact, but it will take time, because we need to be able to say, this is what the science is telling us, this is what the assurance you are being given by government, but by doing this, then this is going to be the outcome. So in short, for me, is anybody sexually active, let's think about contraception or family planning.
Thank you, Professor Peter Gachanja, obstetrician, gynecologist, Mona Karama Athman, reproductive health coordinator from Mombasa County. Thank you for making time. Evelyn Boa, reproductive health advocate from the Maternal and Neonatal Health Coalition of Kenya. Salim Juma and Joanne Butheu, a married couple who joined us to give us their experience with contraception. And of course, Dr. Estella Waiguru, the lead officer at the Family Planning Program in the Ministry of Health. Thank you all for being part of this very, very crucial conversation. Well, we shall switch gears tomorrow, and children are mostly viewed as a highly resilient and able to bounce back from just about everything, right? Well, tomorrow we shall take a trip down memory lane as we establish how unresolved childhood trauma has a huge impact in adulthood. See you from 7 a.m.
Mihala Barasa, and welcome to Learn in a Minute. Have you ever walked into a yoga class, a Zumba class, an aerobics class, or a spin class, the one with perceived riding of bicycles? What is the one common factor for all these classes? More often than not, you'll find that these classes are attended largely by women. Are you also a beginner in fitness, trying to look into joining a fitness activity, and a little intimidated and shy about the weightlifting section and being lonely at the gym? Well, it is highly recommended that as a woman, shy, intimidated, and wanting to know what happens in the fitness world, to join a group activity because they are more social, they are more friendly, you are more likely to make companions there, and this will get you in the fitness mode. This has been Learn in a Minute, and I am Mihala Barasa.
A place in your heart.
Audrey!
Where are you?
Hey, Audrey, bring Sean back!
Audrey! Sean!
Sean!